Good morning. Welcome to the 27th session of mechanical measurements. Today's topic in video session is to discuss about the hydraulic dynamometer and Borden's tube pressure gauge. This is in unit 3, that is measurement of force, torque and pressure. And today's contents to be discussed are hydraulic dynamometer, its working principle, construction, working and MCQs. Then secondly, we are going to discuss Borden's tube pressure gauge, its principle, construction, working and MCQs. Now let us start with hydraulic dynamometer. Before going to hydraulic dynamometer, in the last session we have defined what is torque. We know that torque is a force which causes rotation. If you see this picture, when you are going to apply a linear force, it causes rotation. Linear force is transformed into rotary motion. It means this torque is going to cause rotation. And the torque is always perpendicular to the force and distance. As we have already discussed, if you consider the thumb rule, electrical thumb rule, if the indexing figure indicates the force, the middle force indicates the distance, then the torque will be perpendicular to both force and the distance. Now coming to today's topic, hydraulic dynamometer. This hydraulic dynamometer is a device which is used for the measurement of torque and power. This hydraulic dynamometer uses fluid friction for dissipation of the input energy. In the last class, we have discussed the Prony-Brake dynamometer, which uses mechanical energy, heat energy for the dissipation of the energy. Here, hydraulic dynamometer uses fluid friction for dissipation of the input energy. This hydraulic dynamometer is a absorption type of dynamometer. As we have already learned, there are three types of dynamometers available. The one is absorption type, second is driving type dynamometer, and third is the transmission type dynamometer. In absorption type dynamometer, we are going to measure the power or the torque, making the driving shaft to stop. After stopping the shaft, we are going to measure the torque. That is absorption type dynamometer. Whereas in driving type dynamometer, while the shaft is in rotation, we are going to measure the torque or the power. Here, in case of hydraulic dynamometer, after stopping this shaft, we are going to measure the torque or the power. And absorption type dynamometers are generally employed for measurement of horsepower in IC engines and electrical motors. And if you see here, these are the two schematic diagrams, two different. This is one type of schematic diagram. This is the second type of schematic diagram. From the exam point of view, you can write either this view or this schematic diagram. I hope the right side schematic diagram is very simple to write. I prefer you to write from the exam point of view, this schematic diagram. But for our explanation, I am going to use both the diagrams. And if you see here, generally a hydraulic dynamometer consists of two main parts. One is the rotor. This is the rotor. In this schematic diagram, this is the rotor. And another is the stator. This right hand and this left hand. Here, this and this are the stator. The rotor is also called as rotating disc, whereas stator is also known as stationary disc. This generally, the hydraulic dynamometer consists of a rotating disc called the rotor and the stationary disc called the other is the stationary disc or the stator. This is the stator, this is the rotor. In this schematic diagram, this is the rotor, this is the stator, this and this. This is the left hand side, this is the right hand side, this is the stator. And this rotating disc or the rotor is keyed to the driving shaft of prime mover, and it will revolve inside the stationary casing. If you see this simple schematic diagram, this rotor is mounted on the driving shaft, which is keyed to this driving shaft, and it revolves inside the stationary casing. And the stationary casing, if you see here, this is mounted on the anti-friction bearing. This is one anti-friction bearing. This is the second anti-friction bearing. The stationary casing or the stator is mounted on the anti-friction bearings, and it has a brake drum and a balancing system attached to it, but it is not shown in the sketch. Brake drum and balancing system is attached to the stationary casing. This rotary or the disc or the rotor is keyed to the prime mover shaft, whereas stator is mounted on the anti-friction bearing. And to this stator, a brake drum and a balancing system is attached to it, but it is not shown in the sketch. And the stationary casing is in two halves. Stator is made up of two halves and placed on either side of the rotating disc. This is the rotor or the rotating disc. On either side of this stationary casing or the stator is placed in two halves, so that it is going to form a chamber. You can see here, this is chamber pockets. These are nothing but chambers are nothing but the water pockets, and through which this chamber a stream of water flow is maintained. Stator rotor is keyed to the prime mover, and the stator is mounted on the anti-friction bearings, and to the stator brake drum and balancing system is attached, and the stator is made into two halves. These are placed on either side of the rotor to form the chambers through which a stream of water flow is maintained. And when the brake is applied or operated, the water is going to follow a helical path as shown here. When we are going to apply the brake, the water in this chamber will follow a helical path, and consequently the vortices and eddy current is set up in the water. It means the turbulence effect will be there in the chamber. Vortices and eddy current is set up in the water, and this makes or tends to rotate the stator in the direction of the rotation of the rotor. When you are going to apply the brake, the water in the chamber will follow the helical path, and consequently vortices and eddy current is set up in the water. This causes the stationary casing to rotate in the direction of the rotor. This tendency is opposed by the brake drum and balancing system, due to which torque is measured. This is how we are going to measure the torque in case of a hydraulic dynamometer. Brake drum and balancing system is attached to the stator. When the brake is applied, the water will follow a helical path in the chamber. Because of that, a turbulence effect or the vortices and eddy current is set up in the water, and this makes the stator to rotate in the direction of the rotor or the shaft, and this tendency is opposed by the brake drum and the balancing system, due to which torque is measured. And the amount of torque can be controlled by varying the amount of quantity of water flow into the chamber. For power measurement, we can control the braking by means of two things. One is the quantity of water flow, or by varying the distance between the rotor and the stator. This is the gap width, or the distance between the rotor and stator. By varying the quantity of water flow, or by varying the distance between the rotor and stator, we can control the braking capacity in case of a hydraulic dynamometer. And here the work done per minute, or the brake power, is calculated by the relation P is proportional to N cube d to the power of 1 by 5. And here P is the power, N is the rotational speed, and d is the rotor diameter. And generally this hydraulic dynamometer is employed up to 10,000 rpm, and its power limit is 25,000 HP. Remember, hydraulic dynamometer can be employed up to 10,000 rpm, and its power limit is up to 25,000 HP. Now let us discuss about the advantages of hydraulic dynamometer. You remember there are this minimum 5 advantages. The first advantage is that since here fluid friction is employed, means either we are going to use either water or some other fluid. Generally water is employed, the fluid is water, and this water produces the cooling effect. This is the first advantage. Then the second advantage is it has high absorption capacity at low cost and small space. When we compare with the Prony-Brake dynamometer, this has high absorption capacity at low cost and small space. The third advantage is output power can be controlled. How? Either by varying the water flow into the chamber, or by varying the distance between the rotor and the stator. And the fourth advantage is that it employs fluid friction. The last advantage is that here the heat is carried away by the fluid itself. The heat is carried away by the fluid itself. These are the advantages of hydraulic dynamometer. Now once again, let us know about what type of question can be asked in the exam. Here they are going to ask the question for 5 marks. Explain with a neat sketch the working of hydraulic dynamometer. This is a question for 5 marks. Out of the 5 marks, 2 marks are given for the sketch. You can write this sketch. This is the rotor. This is the stationary casing or the stator placed on both the sides. And here anti-friction bearing is missing. You have to write the anti-friction bearing. And these are the chambers. This rotor is keyed to the shaft which is under test, and this stator will be mounted on the anti-friction bearings. Now just you go on giving a brief description point wise. See, this hydraulic dynamometer uses a fluid friction for the dissipation of input energy. This is the first thing you should remember. Then the second thing, this is a absorption type dynamometer. It means we are going to measure the power by stopping the shaft. Generally, absorption dynamometers are employed for IC engines and electrical motors. Therefore, this hydraulic dynamometer is a absorption type dynamometer. And generally, this hydraulic dynamometer consists of a rotor and stator. And this rotating disc is generally key to the driving shaft of prime mover, and it revolves inside the stationary casing. And this stationary casing will be mounted on anti-friction bearings, and it has a brake drum and a balancing system attached to the stator. But in our schematic diagram, it is not shown. Brake drum and balancing system will be attached to the stator. And the stationary casing will be in two halves, and it will be placed on either side of the rotor to form water chambers. These are the water chambers. And this chamber, a stream of water flow is maintained. And when we are going to apply the brake, which is attached to the stator, the water in this chamber is going to follow the helical path as shown here. And due to this helical path, a turbulent effect will be there, which because of these vortices and eddy currents is set up in water, and it tends to rotate the stator in the direction of the rotor. And the tendency opposed by the brake drum and balance system, due to which the torque can be measured. And here the control of braking is carried out by two things. One is by varying the quantity of water flow, or by varying the distance between the rotor and stator. And the brake power is given by the relation P is directly proportional to N cube d to the power of 1 by 5, where here P is the power, N is the rotational speed, and D is the rotor diameter. And this hydraulic dynamometer is suitable up to 10,000 rpm, and the power limit is 25,000 HP. Now coming to the next topic in this hydraulic dynamometer is multiple choice questions. These multiple choice questions are asked to know how much knowledge you have gained or attained in this session. Now the first question is hydraulic dynamometer uses dash for dissipation of the input energy. 4 options are given. Your time now starts is 15 seconds. Try to answer. A, mechanical friction. Option B, air friction. C, fluid friction. D, all of the above. And the correct answer should be hydraulic dynamometer uses. The correct answer is fluid friction for dissipation of the input energy. Then the second question, or the second thing you should remember, absorption type dynamometer examples are, the 4 options are there. Your time starts now. A, Roni brake dynamometer, hydraulic dynamometer, rope brake dynamometer, all of the above. Yes, the correct answer should be here mechanical energy will be dissipated, here fluid friction is employed, here heat energy, here also heat energy. Therefore the correct answer is all of the above. Then the third thing you should remember, in hydraulic dynamometer the stator is keyed to the driving shaft of prime mover, and it revolves inside the rotor. Yes, you try to answer within 15 seconds. Your time starts. True or false? In hydraulic dynamometer, the stator is keyed to the driving shaft of the prime mover and revolves inside the rotor. Yes. Yeah. The correct answer is B, false. The correct answer should be, in hydraulic dynamometer, the rotor is keyed to the driving shaft of the prime mover and it revolves inside the stator is the correct answer. For this question, the correct answer is B. But generally, in hydraulic dynamometer, stator will be mounted on the anti-friction bearing, and rotor is key to the driving shaft, and rotor is going to revolve or rotate inside the stator. Then the third thing you should remember, in hydraulic dynamometer, the stationary casing is mounted on. Your time starts now. 4 options are given. In hydraulic dynamometer, the stationary casing is mounted on directly on driving shaft, anti-friction bearings, either A or B, D, none of the above. Yes, the correct answer should be anti-friction bearings. Stator or the stationary casing will be generally mounted on anti-friction bearings, whereas rotor will be directly mounted on the driving shaft. The fifth thing you should remember, the brake drum and a balancing system in hydraulic dynamometer is attached to. Your time starts now, 15 seconds. Option A shaft, option B rotor, C stator, D pedestal. The correct answer should be yes. If you are not going to be able to answer, the correct answer is that is option C stator. Brake drum and balance system in hydraulic dynamometer will be generally attached to the stator. The next thing you should remember, in hydraulic dynamometer, when the brake is operated, the water follows a dash path. Your time starts now. Elliptical path, helical path, circular path, taper path. The correct answer should be yes. It is going to follow. Yes, the correct answer should be B, that is helical path. Next thing you should remember, control of braking is carried out by bearing. Your time starts now. 4 options are given. A, the quantity of water flow, distance between the rotor and stator, either A or B, D, none of the above. Yes, control of braking is varied by varying the quantity of water flow or by varying the distance between the rotor and stator. Therefore, the correct answer is either A or B. That is option C is the correct answer. Then the next thing you should remember, the advantages of hydraulic dynamometer are 4 options are given. The correct answer should be, your time starts. A, output power can be controlled. B, employs fluid friction. C, heat is carried by the fluid itself. D, all of the above. Therefore, the correct answer, yes, this is A option is correct, option B is correct, option C is correct. Therefore, the answer option D is the correct, all of the above. This is about hydraulic dynamometer. Then in today's section, let us discuss about the pressure also. Here, first let us define what is pressure. The pressure is the force exerted by a medium, usually a fluid, on a unit area. If you want to define pressure, it is generally we can say it is a force exerted on a unit area. Simply we can say that force exerted on an unit area is defined as the pressure. Or for a sense of definition, I have given here, pressure is the force exerted by a medium, usually a fluid, on a unit area. And here the medium can be either it may be a liquid, or it may be gas, or it may be a solid. Force exerted by a medium. Medium may be either liquid, gas, or solid. And the unit of pressure, generally we define the pressure as the force per unit area. And its unit may depend upon different contexts. It can be given either in atmospheres, bars, Pascal, or in terms of height of the liquid column. Pressure may have different units depending upon the different contexts. It may be atmosphere, bars, Pascal, or in terms of the height of the liquid column. Now let us know the difference between atmosphere, bars, Pascal and height of the liquid column. Generally, 1 atmosphere will be equal to 760 mm of Hg, that is the difference height of the liquid mercury column, or 1 atmosphere will be equal to 1.013 into 10 to the power of 5 Pascal, or 1 atmosphere will be equal to 1.013 bar. Therefore, you remember the units of pressure. It may be atmosphere, or it may be millimeter of Hg, or it may be a Pascal, or it may be in bar. And generally, the standard atmospheric level is always measured at the sea level, and the atmospheric pressure will decreases with the increasing height or the altitude. And we should know why this pressure is so much important. You should remember here 3 important reasons. The first one is, it is a quantity that describes a system. It is a quantity that describes a system. Now in case of IC engines, the pressure is going to vary continuously with time and determines the power output of the engine. Hence, this measurement of pressure is important. The first thing. The second thing, it is invariably a significant process parameter. Now, in case of in thermal power plants, or in petroleum plants, or it may be in pharmaceutical companies, where there are boilers are there, the operating pressure of the boilers need to be closely monitored during the operation. Therefore, the measurement of pressure once again becomes a very important parameter. And thirdly, the pressure difference. Many a time, the pressure difference is used as a means of measuring the flow rate of a fluid. Because of these 3 reasons, we find the measurement of pressure is very important reason. The 3 reasons are, it is a quantity that describes a system. Secondly, it is invariably a significant process parameter. Thirdly, pressure difference is employed as a means for measuring the flow rate of a fluid. And from the exam point of view, we are going to discuss 3 different pressure measuring instruments. One is Bourdon's pressure tube gauge, second one is diaphragm type pressure gauge, and third one is McLeod gauge. In today's session, we are going to discuss about the Bourdon tube pressure gauge. Now coming to the Bourdon tube pressure gauge, this tube is employed for measuring medium to high pressure. This Bourdon tube pressure gauge is generally employed for measurement of medium to high pressures. And Bourdon tubes are capable of measuring above or below the atmospheric pressure. Bourdon tubes are employed for measuring medium or high pressure, and also the Bourdon tube pressure gauge measures above or below the atmospheric pressure. Now let us see the simulation of Bourdon tube pressure gauge.
Working. When steam enters the elliptical tube, the tube section tries to become circular, which causes the other end of the tube to move outwards. The movement of the closed end of the tube is transmitted and magnified by the link and the toothed sector. The magnitude of the movement of the sector is indicated by the pointer on the dial. The spring tube is surrounded by the atmospheric air. The pressure in the interior of the tube is above that of the atmosphere. Hence, absolute pressure is equal to gauge pressure plus atmospheric pressure.
This is a photo of Bourdon tube pressure gauge. Now let us discuss about the Bourdon tube pressure gauge, which is generally employed for medium to high pressure range, and it measures above or below the atmospheric pressure. And here in this Bourdon tube, this is having a, if you see, this is a C-shaped hollow metal tube, hollow metal bent tube. This C-shaped hollow metal bent tube is called as the Bourdon tube, and this is having elliptical cross section. The cross section of the Bourdon tube is elliptical, and it is an elastic transducer. Elastic transducer means, or it is an elastic diaphragm which deflects proportional with the applied pressure. The C tube, hollow tube, which is a bent tube, is called as the Bourdon tube. It is having a elliptical cross section, and it is an elastic diaphragm. And this Bourdon tube, in place of a C-shaped tube, as already we have discussed in the second chapter, transducers and strain gauges, this C-shaped hollow metal bent tube can also be in the form of helical tube, twisted tube, or spiral forms. But generally, all the pressure gauges are going to employ this C-shaped tube. And if you see here, the one end of the tube, Bourdon tube, is fixed and can be used as a pressure inlet, or it is fitted to the fluid whose pressure is to be measured. This is a C tube. One end of the tube, Bourdon tube, is fixed and it is used as a pressure inlet. Means we are going to fix this fixed end to the fluid whose pressure to be measured. When the pressure, when the fluid is entered before that, and here this one end is fixed, the other end is free, and also it is closed. This one end is fixed to the fluid whose pressure is to be measured, and this other end is closed and free for movement. This is free for movement. And due to the applied pressure, what happens when you are going to apply the pressure, the fluid flow, the tube, it tends to straighten. Generally, the angle of this bent tube is around approximately 270 degrees, 270 degrees centigrades, and the cross section is generally the elliptical shape. The shape of the cross section of this tube is elliptical. And when you are going to pass a fluid connected to the fluid, the applied pressure, it causes the tube to become circular. This elliptical shape is going to become a circular shape, and also the circular arc which is bent, it is going to straighten, it is going to straighten, and straighten means this is going to get extended. We are going to see in the next picture slides. Due to the applied pressure, the tube straightens out and the elliptical section acquires the circular cross section, and this pressure causes the free end to move within this distance. The distance here you can see, this causes, if you see in the fairs or in the exhibitions of children, you can see one type of spiral shaped balloon will be there. When you are going to blow the air, it is going to get straightened. Similar type action is going to happen here in Bourdon tube. When the fluid enters under pressure, it will tries to, which is bent, it tries to straighten, and also the which is in the elliptical shape, it is going to become a circular cross section, and that pressure is going to cause this free end to move here, and that the movement of the Bourdon tube is proportional to the applied pressure. And to measure the pressure, the movement of the free end is often mechanically magnified, and it will be transmitted to the pointer that moves on a scale through a sector and pinion mechanism. For measuring the pressure, this movement of free end is mechanically magnified by means of a pinion and sector mechanism, and the pointer will move on a graduated or calibrated scale, and this calibrated scale or the pointer on the graduated scale indicates the gauge pressure. It indicates the gauge pressure. This is how the Bourdon tube pressure gauge works. Now let us still I am trying to continue to explain you. See, when the fluid end, this is the fixed end, this is the free end. The various parts are, this is the C-shaped Bourdon tube, this is the scale. At the free end, an adjustable link is there, and to this adjustable link is attached to the closed end of the Bourdon tube. Then this sector is pivoted and connected to the adjustable link, and this pinion is mounted on a shaft. To this pinion, a pointer is connected. Now when the fluid enters into the Bourdon tube, this Bourdon tube will try to straighten, and its cross section will going to change, but here if you see, this is going to get straightened, it moves outwards. Because of the outward movement, this adjustable link which is attached to the closed end of the Bourdon tube, this tries to move upwards, and since the sector is pivoted at a point, as the adjustable link moves, this moves backward and it has a oscillatory motion. The sector will have a oscillatory motion, and this sector will, because of the oscillatory motor, it rotates the pinion. As the pointer is connected to the pinion, the pointer will move on a graduated scale, and the scale is calibrated in terms of the pressure. This is how a Bourdon tube pressure gauge works. Now from the exam point of view, the question asked for 5 marks will be, explain with a near sketch the working of Bourdon tube pressure gauge. I try to answer once again here how to answer this question. You write this sketch, for this sketch will be for 2 marks. You should have to label all the parts. Now coming to the details, what are to be, you should write in the exam. The first thing you should know that it is used to measure medium to high pressure. The second thing you should remember, This Bourdon tube pressure gauge can measure above or below the atmospheric pressure. The next thing you should remember, this Bourdon tube is a elliptical tube bent into an arc of a circle. This is the bent tube. It is bent into an arc of a circle. Then the bent tube, this bent tube is called as the Bourdon tube. And when the fixed end is attached to the fluid whose pressure is to be measured, the fluid will enter under pressure into the tube. Then the Bourdon tube, due to the increased pressure, what happens? It tends to expand, and expand means it is going to become a circular form and it will try to straighten. And with the help of this pinion and sector mechanism, the elastic deformation of the Bourdon tube rotates the pointer attached to the pinion, and the pointer will move on a calibrated scale, and the position of the pointer on a scale directly gives the pressure of the fluid. Now let us try to understand what are the things to be remembered in pressure gauge. The first question is dash is defined as the force exerted over a unit area. 4 options are given. Your time starts now. Try to answer. Option A, force. Option B, torque. Option C, pressure. Option D, all of the above. Yes, the correct answer should be dash is defined as the force exerted over a unit area, and the correct answer is pressure. This is the definition of pressure. Pressure is defined as the force exerted over a unit area. Correct answer is C. Whereas force or torque, this torque, it is a force which causes the rotation. This force may be defined in various forms. The force may be it causes motion or it stops the motion, or it may have some reactions also. It may be a tensile pull or it may be a compressive pull regarding force. But the correct definition for the answer is the pressure is defined as the force exerted over a unit area. Then the next thing you should remember, pressure may be measured in answer A, atmosphere. Your time starts now. Option A, atmosphere. B, bars. C, Pascal. D, in terms of height of liquid column. E, all of the above. Yes, the pressure, depending upon the different context, it may have different units. Therefore, the correct answer is all of the above. It can be given either in atmospheres, or it may be bars, or it may be pascals, or in terms of height of the liquid column. Therefore, the correct answer is option E, that is all of the above. Then the next thing you should remember, the measurement of pressure becomes an important aspect due to the following reason. From the exam point of view also, you should remember, he may ask define pressure. Then he may ask list any 3 important aspects why the importance of measurement of pressure. Should write the answers. Your time starts now. Yes, the option A is it is a quantity that describes a system. It is invariably a significant process parameter. C, many a time pressure difference is used as a means of measuring the flow rate of a fluid. Option D is all of the above. Yes, the correct answer is all of the above. In option A, example, in case of a IC engine, the pressure varies with the time. To measure the, in case of option B, in case of thermal plants or in pharmaceutical companies or in petrochemical factories, generally the boiler pressure should be continuously monitored. Therefore, there also it becomes a important parameter. And thirdly, in measurement of pressure difference, for which is used as a means for measuring the flow rate of fluid. All these 3 are required. Therefore, the correct answer will be all of the above. Then the next thing you should remember, Bourdon tube is a composed of a C-shaped hollow metal tube having an dash cross section. Your time starts now. Answer A round, B square, C triangular, D elliptical. Yes, Bourdon tube is composed of a C-shaped hollow metal tube having a dash cross section. Yes, the correct answer is elliptical. This elliptical shape, when the fluid enters into the Bourdon tube, the cross section will be changed to circular, but the initial cross section will be elliptical. The correct answer is elliptical. Then the next thing you should remember, with the help of dash mechanism, the elastic deformation of the Bourdon tube rotates the pointer. Your time starts now. Option A, rack and pinion, B, rack and gear, C, pinion and sector, D, pinion and shaft. The correct answer should be yes. The correct answer has appeared, that is pinion and sector. This is the mechanical mechanism which is employed for magnification in case of a Bourdon tube pressure gauge, the pinion and sector mechanism. Then the next thing you should remember, in case of a Bourdon tube pressure gauge, the pointer on a scale directly gives the dash pressure of the fluid. Your time starts now. Answer A, atmospheric pressure, B, vacuum pressure, C, gauge pressure, D, absolute pressure. The correct answer should be yes, the Bourdon tube gives the gauge pressure. References used. Also, I thank for some of the online videos and online pictures I have used in this session. The team members, thank you. I hope you have enjoyed this session. In the next session, that is 28th session, I am going to continue with diaphragm type pressure gauge and Macleod gauge. Thank you once again.